Hello, everyone, and welcome into another X's and Dogs podcast. Today, we have a kind of special show for you guys, as today marks the start of the second iteration of the 12-team college football playoffs. Last year was a great college football playoff. I thought there were some really good games in that one. Obviously, for all of the Buckeye fans that, quite frequently are also Browns fans, a very exciting college football playoff last year. And Ohio State enters this playoff as, once again, the favorites to win the entire thing, even though they're coming off that tough loss to Indiana just a couple weeks ago. But I wanted to make a kind of special show predicting my predictions for the college football playoffs, talking about who I think is going to win each game, and then also kind of drawing it back to the Browns' point of view, because I think that there are really some very important storylines whenever you're looking at this college football playoff from the Browns' point of view, particularly with some of the quarterbacks, but definitely also some of the other skill position players that this Browns team could be looking to add to their roster in the 2026 draft. So that's kind of the idea of today's show. It's a fun Friday edition. We have some great football on this weekend. Never can complain about additional football games to watch. That's why I was always a big fan of the 12-team college football playoff, the new rule that they made last year. I think it's just super exciting for the sport. They'll definitely make it. It's only going to get bigger. They definitely won't make it any smaller. I think there already are some serious discussions about moving it up to 16 teams. I think as the years go on, it'll probably get even bigger than that. And I think it'll end up looking more like the NFL playoffs, where there's two super leagues or super conferences, I should say, in college football, and there's just half the teams from each of them competing in the playoffs, and it's going to be kind of set up that way. I mean, who knows for sure, but I think that's the way that the framework of college football is heading. And I think that there really are no rules in college football, so they can do whatever they want. They're going to do what results in the most money, the most high leverage, highly watched games being played. So the more college football games, the better for fans, and definitely, college football as well, and all the programs that are making money from these games. All that said, we can go ahead and get started with kind of the predictions. And I think that there are some easy games to predict here in the first round, but also there are some very tough games to predict in the first round. So I want to start with kind of some of the easier ones that I see likely being more one-sided games. Obviously, Oregon and JMU. I'm taking Oregon in that one. JMU should just be happy that they're in the tournament. They really don't have much of a chance to compete in this game, but they should be excited that they were able to make it to the tournament. That's a big accomplishment for a James Madison program, and let's just see what they're able to do against Oregon, but I'm sure Oregon will take care of them pretty easily. A similar situation in Ole Miss for Ole Miss and Tulane. I think Tulane is a little bit better than JMU. They'll be a little bit more competitive against this Ole Miss team. I actually think Ole Miss and Tulane have played already this year one time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Ole Miss blew them out already once. Let me quickly look that up to see if I can find an answer for you guys. But, this is going to be another one of those one-sided games regardless. So on September 20th, Ole Miss beat Tulane 45-10. So, I mean, it's been a while. Tulane could have improved throughout the season, but I'm sure Ole Miss did too. I'd estimate a very similar score to that in this game. So right off the bat, we got a couple easy prediction games. As you guys might be able to hear the train going by in the background, so I apologize about that. But Oregon, Ole Miss, Now moving to the two that are maybe a little bit, tighter. I think it's going to be, these ones will be a little bit more challenging to predict. These are four really good football teams in both of these next two games. And I guess we'll start with the Alabama-Oklahoma game that is on this evening. I think this is definitely the best game of the first round. I'm by far most interested in this game just because I think both of these teams have been super fun to watch all season long. John Mateer versus Ty Simpson, both kind of dealing with some injuries in their own regard. Both not fully healthy in this game, but both are very good quarterbacks at the college football level. And I'll get more into Ty Simpson from a Browns point of view later on in the podcast today. But these two teams did play. I believe Alabama hosted that one earlier in the season. It was actually just like a few weeks ago at this point. And Oklahoma did beat Alabama in Alabama. So for me, I always say it's really hard to beat a team twice. I also think that Alabama is slightly better than Oklahoma. Now, this game being in Oklahoma will be obviously a very big challenge for Alabama. That we saw last year in the college football playoffs that all of the home teams won their respective first round games. So it's going to be hard for me to fade Oklahoma in this spot and go with Alabama. But I really do think that Alabama will pull this game out. I think it'll be very close, but I'm going to select Alabama in this one. I think, I just think that, Alabama's offense is better than Oklahoma's offense. Oklahoma does have a very good defense. And I think if Oklahoma wins this game, they have a really good chance at competing with Indiana. Honestly, both of these teams have a good chance, at competing with Indiana in the next round. Just based on, they're blue bloods. Like, these are two really, really good programs that have really good players on the team. Both of them just had a couple losses in the season that were a little disappointing and led them now to being the 8 and 9 seeds rather than a higher seed. So yeah, this is a tough one. I'm going to pick Alabama. I think it'll be a really close game. I'm super excited. I think it's great that this one's on the opening Friday night for the playoffs because I think this has potential to be the best game of the first round, as I said earlier. So yeah, Alabama takes this one. That leads us into the last game of the first round. This one also should be a good game. I'm not as interested in this game just because I haven't watched a ton of Texas A&M this season. I have watched a decent amount of Miami games, but this could be a very close game. I think the game being in Texas A&M for me is the biggest difference for this one. Miami has had a couple tough losses this season, but they've also looked really good in some games. That defensive line for Miami is stacked. They have, led by Ruben Bain, they have a dangerous front of their defense there, and I think that will assist them here in the playoffs for sure. You're definitely going to need that defensive line to play out of their mind to go into A&M and beat them, because that stadium gets loud. It'll be rocking, I guarantee it. It's a noon game, so it won't be a night game, but it'll still be just as loud in that stadium. I'm going to pick A&M in this one just because I think Miami does have the capability to have a bad game. We've seen it a few times this season, playing around with some not so good teams. So yeah, I'm going to go A&M in this one. Not going to fade another home team in the first round. I can't find myself picking more than one away team to win, their first round game here. So we got Oregon, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss winning the first round. That moves us into the second round. This is when things get really interesting, and this is where I have a hard time kind of picking these games. I think last year in the second round, it was a little bit more, I don't want to say obvious, but there was easier selections to be made. Like, you had that Ohio State team who was really good. You had Penn State playing like Boise State. And obviously Notre Dame was playing really well. So I think there were just easier games to predict in that one. We get some really tough games here, and there's a few reasons. Let's start with the Texas Tech Oregon game. So the thing with Texas Tech is it's a team who has passed every test thrown at them with flying colors. They have dominated pretty much everyone they've faced, except for that one loss they do have. Other than that, they've been dominant in every game. So this is a Texas Tech team who is probably really good, but they haven't faced anyone like Oregon the entire season. There is no Big 12 opponent that offers the athleticism, the size, the quickness, the speed that, an Oregon team is going to throw at them. And an Oregon team that's led by one of the best quarterbacks in college football, in Dante Moore, who's more than likely going to be a first-round pick. I have to select Oregon in this game. I can't find myself picking Texas Tech in this one. I just think Oregon has more talent, and that's crazy to say because Texas Tech, is one of the top 4 teams, a conference winner, and is able to get that first round bye for a reason. Like, I'm sure they're a really good team, but I just think I trust Oregon's quarterback a little bit more. Both quarterbacks are good, but I trust Dante Moore a little bit more in this one. And I think Oregon's offense is probably better than Texas Tech's offense, although Texas Tech has a really, really good defense. So this will be a great test for Dante Moore. I do think I'm going to pick Oregon in this one to probably be. Honestly, it'll be interesting to see if they're favorites in this game. I think they probably will, to be honest, be favorites against Texas Tech, but we'll see how that one plays out. So I don't know if I can say technically I'm picking the underdog, but picking the lower seed to beat Texas Tech in that one. We'll now have Alabama playing against the number 1 undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. As much as I want to say Alabama can win this game, I'm picking Indiana. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. Indiana's been fantastic this year. They deserve to have the benefit. I don't want to say the benefit of the doubt, but they deserve to have the respect where you select them to beat the 9 seed. That's a really good team, really physical team. They run the ball well. They have Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner, and they can play offense and play defense just as good as anybody in the country. So I'm taking Indiana. That leads to the Ohio State Texas A&M game. Now this one for me, this is going to be a really big test for Ohio State. What I mean by that is Ohio State, I realize most of us probably watching this are Ohio State fans. So the one takeaway I have from Ohio State season, and the one thing that worries me, is every time Ohio State has faced up against, a ranked opponent, a really good team, their offense hasn't looked as dynamic as it does in the other games. The Texas game, I think they scored 14 points or something, 14 or 17 points in that one. The Michigan game, I will say the Michigan game, the offense played a little better, but I think the story in that one was mostly the defense. The defense dominated that game in Michigan. It's not like the offense was crazy productive in that one. So then, obviously the Indiana game where they only scored 10 points. That's the only thing that worries me with this Ohio State team in the playoffs here is you're going to be facing a ton of really good defenses. If Miami does beat Texas A&M, Ohio State's going to have, in the first game of the playoffs, this Miami defense with probably the best defensive line in college football. And they're going to have their hands full in that one. But I did pick Texas A&M, and for that reason, I think I'm going to pick Ohio State. I actually think that Miami has a better chance to beat Ohio State than Texas A&M does. But I think Texas A&M will win that Miami game. It's kind of that weird situation there, but I'm confident that Texas A&M will beat Miami, and then I'm going to take Ohio State to beat Texas A&M. I don't think defensively A&M has they're a good defensive team, but I don't think they're as good as Indiana or as good as the team Ohio State's about to face in the next round, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But I'm taking Ohio State in that one, sending them to the semifinals. Next game is really interesting. It's a game that was a fantastic show earlier in the season when they played Georgia and Ole Miss. I think that this will be another close game. I'm going to take Georgia for sure in this game just because of the way they have been playing recently. Like they've been playing, to me, like the best team in the country. I'm very high on Georgia this season. I think they're playing better than anybody else. I know Indiana just beat Ohio State, and there's that whole side of the situation, but Georgia just had absolutely no problems with Alabama in the SEC championship game. Georgia's defense is fantastic. Their offense is really good too. They run the football well. Their pass game is pretty good. It's effective. Kirby's going to have them ready to go in the playoffs. Like I'm really high on Georgia, so I'm taking Georgia to beat Ole Miss in this one. I think it'll be a pretty good game, but definitely taking Georgia. So that leads us to the Final Four, the semifinals. We have two really good games here. We have Indiana, Big Ten matchup here in Indiana, and Oregon facing off on one side of the bracket. The other side of the bracket, we have, obviously, Ohio State and Georgia. So these, to me, these are the four best teams in the country right now. Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. I know Texas Tech is really good too, but I just think that Oregon's a little bit better. So let's start with the Indiana-Oregon game. This is a game we've seen before this year. So, it's not going to be anything too surprising. It was a really close, hard-fought, physical game in Oregon earlier this season. Both of those teams could have easily won that game. In this spot here, this is a toss-up for me. I think I'm going to take Indiana still in this one. I think, for me, the only thing that gives me a little bit of a pull towards Oregon is that it's hard to beat a team twice. And also, Oregon is so well coached that I think that they will have, but I mean, both Oregon and Indiana, both have fantastic coaches that are some of the best in college football. So they're both going to have these adjustments kind of based on that first game. That's going to be really interesting. And that's why I'm hoping to see this game here in the playoffs. I'm going to pick Indiana. I'm going to pick Indiana still. I think they've deserved it they've deserved in the way they play defensively, and the way they've built that roster to be as good as anybody. I think they'll win this one. I just trust Mendoza a touch more than Dante Moore at this point. That's not a prediction into their NFL careers at all, but I think right now in this moment, I trust Fernando Mendoza a little bit more than I do Dante Moore. So I'm going to take Indiana there to head to the national championship game. So we'll have Ohio State, Georgia facing off on the other side of the bracket here. This one is a 50-50, it's going to be a fantastic game. Probably the two best defenses going at it here. I think Georgia's defense, earlier in the season wasn't as good as they are now. They have been playing ridiculous, that Georgia defense recently. So obviously we know the talent Ohio State has, multiple first round picks on that defense line, linebackers. So this is a tough one. I think I'm going to go Georgia in this one, though. I don't want to upset any Ohio State fans, but the thing for me that just gives me a little bit of a hard time with Ohio State is that fact that whenever they've faced up against really good defenses this season, they've struggled a little bit offensively. And also, they have that their freshman quarterback, Julian Sayin. It's just going to be super high leverage, high pressure environment. I'm not going to say Julian Sayin played bad against Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, but the team scored 10 points. So, yeah, like, don't kill me in the comments. I know most of you guys are Ohio State fans. I just think Georgia's going to take that one. For me, it just, I trust Kirby Smart a little bit more than Ryan Day too. So there's that part of it. Ryan Day's turned into a pretty good coach, but I think he's got to prove it a little bit more. You guys are going to kill me for this. I'm picking Georgia though. It's going to be Georgia, Indiana in my national championship game. I'm taking Georgia again. If I took Georgia to beat Ohio State, I'm taking them to beat Indiana too. That'll be a really good game. I think the classic Big Ten SEC national championship game is fantastic. We weren't able to get one of those last year, but I'm taking Georgia still because I just think that they're playing the best. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, they're playing the best right now. They look like the best team to me. And I think they have really rounded into form at the right part of the season here. And I think the Georgia Bulldogs will be the national champions this year. And we'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you see this bracket playing out. There's going to be a ton of really good games. I can't wait. I love this time of the year, getting into the college football playoffs, also winding down the NFL season, getting a better view of like who's going to be in the NFL playoffs. And although unfortunately for us Browns fans, we know that we got no shot at that, but we do have a shot at the first overall pick. So that's what matters. Now I want to talk about the main things we should be watching as Browns fans in the college football playoff. And it all starts with the quarterbacks. So we'll kind of go down the order here with the big three names that we've talked about all year. Let's start with Ty Simpson because he plays tonight. It's become less and less likely, I should say, that Ty Simpson will come out in the 2026 NFL draft. I think for his career, it's probably best for him to go back to Alabama. He's a guy who's only started 13 games? I mean, he's only played this year. So, as a guy who's only started 13 college football games, there's not a lot of proof of success in the NFL for guys that have, started sub 20 games in college football. So, knowing that, I think it could greatly benefit him to go back to school. But the other part of this is, Kalen DeBoer has serious smoke going on with the Michigan position. Now, I'm not saying he's for sure going to leave Alabama, but there's real consideration there, it seems. And I'm just not so sure that Ty Simpson wants to go back. I'm blanking on the they have a 5-star recruit backing him up at the quarterback position too, who the Alabama fans have been super excited about. I can't remember his name right now for some reason, but having that pressure to, he's going to have to play fantastic or else the fans are going to want to see that 5-star backup. Also, is there going to be a new coach? I think it just, those two things to me kind of start to push Ty Simpson, especially if he plays well here in the playoffs. If he, plays a game, or if he beats Oklahoma in Oklahoma, plays well, maybe loses to Indiana, but still plays well in that game. That's two additional tapes out there of against really good defenses, that he would have looked good in. So I think that'll play another role too. So at that point, maybe he's hearing first round grades. I don't think he's going to be like a top 5 pick, but could he be a back end of the top 10 or maybe like a 10 to 15 range? I think Ty Simpson's a really interesting situation here whenever you're looking at kind of the quarterback position in the draft. And of course, us Browns fans that's where we should be looking at fully. That's where all of our attention should be, in my opinion. So that'll be interesting to see Not saying that I would predict him coming out, but I think there's a little bit more of a chance than we would have said just a couple weeks ago. So, obviously, Dante Moore, similar situation, although I think he's much more likely to come out. I would actually say now it's more likely than not that he will come out, in this draft here. So, obviously, he can't have like a couple stinkers here in the playoffs. I don't think he's going to look bad against James Madison. I'm sure they're going to boat race them. But, Texas Tech will be a really good test for him. That's a fantastic defense, a good football team. But I think it's also a game that Oregon can win. So, obviously I picked them. So, potentially we get 3 more games of Dante Moore here, which not only is more experience for him, but it's more tape to put out there against good football teams. Just to solidify that all those question marks that are out there, I just think people haven't seen Dante Moore play enough. And I think putting him on stage, on the national stage, and if he plays well, will make it super obvious that he really is a good first round pick option for a quarterback needy team in the NFL. And I'm already there with him. I think he's going to be a good NFL player. He maybe could use some time to develop, sit behind a veteran for a little bit, but the guy's super talented. He was a 5-star recruit. He's got all of the intangibles and the tangibles as well. So, obviously a big playoff for Dante Moore. Browns fans should keep a very close eye on him because I think if I had to say who's the most likely quarterback the Browns would end up with, it would be Dante Moore. So keep a very close eye on him. Obviously, we know, though, too, the third guy, Fernando Mendoza, he's got a chance to solidify himself as that number 1 pick. He's undefeated Heisman winner, had a fantastic year on an Indiana team, and he's got a chance now to solidify that he is the best player in college football, deserves that number 1 pick. And he's gonna have to work for it, man. He's probably gonna play either Alabama, Oklahoma, then he'll play a really good Texas Tech team or a really good Oregon team, and then he's gonna, obviously have to go in there and face Ohio State or Georgia. So he's got quite the path to get to a national championship. But if he's able to do that, I think he shuts everyone up that's kind of doubting him as a Heisman and as that first overall pick. So that's kind of what we're watching for at the quarterback position as Browns fans. I will say, I think we should also keep our eyes on Carnell Tate. If the Browns do decide to go the route of rolling the dice with Shedeur Sanders next year as the quarterback or some other veteran, which I am currently not in support of. But if they do decide to do that, it's an option. I think Carnell Tate is the front runner for that first pick that we'll have, that early pick that we'll have. And I just want to see Carnell have a couple of those games this playoff run where he has, over 100 yards or just looks dominant in college football, which he's done this season. But I think on the really big stage, I think it's important for him to put that on tape, put that dominant performance on tape to where he can shut up some of the doubters, because there are some doubters with Carnell Tate saying he's getting the secondary, the second best cornerback on every team guarding him because Jeremiah Smith, is taking up all the attention. So he's, there is some doubt with Carnell, and some people saying he's not the fastest guy in the world. But I think if he's able to have a couple really nice performances, he's going to solidify himself as that wide receiver 1 in this draft. And I think he'll be a real option for the Browns if they're not going down the quarterback route. So those are my guys to watch. I gave you 4 of them. If you guys have any other names to specifically keep your eye on in the playoffs here, let me know in the comments. Hopefully you guys enjoy the playoffs this weekend. A couple really good games, a couple not so good games, but hopefully everyone is able to enjoy. As I said earlier this week, I'll be traveling to Florida for the holidays, so I won't have any YouTube video podcasts out for you guys, but I still probably will have some audio format on whatever podcast platform you use. So keep an eye out for that. We'll get to watch the Browns Bills on Sunday, which, oh God, but we'll break that down after the game on Sunday. So hopefully everyone has a great weekend. Hopefully everyone has a great week next week. Super excited for the holidays here. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Hit a like if you did enjoy. I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.